Hi, I'm just making a very quick video with my ugly mug on it for once because I want to talk to you about the brushes that I use. I'm going to be following this up with a demo about what each brush does. A lot of people, me included, have hundreds of brushes, and it's a question of deciding which ones to use. I've got hundreds of brushes because I'm a mug. You put me in an art shop and I'm a bit like an alcoholic in a brewery. I just can't stop. I buy stuff because it looks pretty. I don't need hardly any of the brushes I use. Some of my favourite artists use very few. Most of the time, and we're talking about watercolouring now, I use maybe half a dozen brushes, and I'm going to take you through those now, and then I'm going to show you what each brush does. First and foremost, I use a hake. Now they are made of pony hair, they're or goat hair, depends on which make. That's 2-inch one, it's a big one. They come in they come in several different sizes now. My friend Lois has got one which is huge, but that's what I call a large hake. It's a Ron Ranson, and that's called a large. It's made by Pro Art. That is years old. It's very fluffy when it's dry. When it's wet, it comes to a very sharp chisel point. I don't know if you can see that. It's damp now, but you can draw pencil thin lines with that if you're careful with it. They're a bit tricky because they hold an awful lot of water, take a lot of getting used to, and I am not the most brilliant user of a hake in the world, but I'm starting to get competent now. Brilliant brush. If you're doing loose stuff, you need one of them. The other big brush I use is that one. That is a 1.5-inch Cotman synthetic brush. Again, it's big, it holds a lot of water, holds a lot of paint. If you put water in it, dry it out, it comes to a superb chisel point. Again, you can get pencil thin lines with a brush like that, or you can cover huge areas very quickly depending on how you use it. More of that later. Okay, while we're on flats, the other brush I use in that range is a Cotman 1/2-inch, and that one is again a flat, comes to a very fine chisel point. Brilliant for doing houses, stuff like that. You can get really clear geometric shapes with that brush. I'll show you how it works after. Right, now, away from the flats to some extent, this is one of my favourite brushes. If you watch any of my videos, you'll see me using this an awful lot with watercolour. This is a Stratford and York Jet. It's made out of squirrel hair plus synthetic hair, but it's absolutely brilliant. They went out of business years ago. I don't know why, because they were arguably the best brush makers in the world at that time. What I love about this is you've got a huge, very soft, see how soft it is, very soft brush, and yet put water on it, give it a shake, and it comes to a little shape. It's not a chisel, it's got a little rounded edge, but again you can get tiny marks out. It comes to a point, but it's flat side to side. It's a lovely brush. Play with something like that for ages. Stratford and York don't make them anymore, but you can get brushes like that on the internet quite easily. Lovely brush. Still with Stratford and York, another one. This is another flat brush like the other ones I used, little 1/2 inch, but that one is squirrel hair, holds a huge amount of water or paint, and you can paint with that for ages, do your geometric stuff, do tiny little straight lines with the edge of it. See, can you see how thin it is there? It's at the point it comes. It's a lovely brush to use. That's that one. The other ones I use, again squirrel hair, Pro Art squirrel mops. I've got 2 of them. There's a big one, and that's a little one. They hold huge amounts of paint. They're squirrel, they're lovely and soft. And put water on them, give it a shake, and it comes to a very narrow point. That one's not quite so sharp, but this little one, that's just with a shape, and look at that, it's got a needle sharp point on it. You can use that for tiny little details, or if you spread it out, you can use it for quite wide. Spreads out quite wide there. It again, versatile brushes. That's what you're looking for in a brush, is versatility. Again, I'll show you what they do afterwards, but that's the squirrel mops. Then we come on to brushes that I drop all over the place. I also use synthetic round somewhere occasionally. There we go, that's another Cotman's synthetic round. Comes to a reasonably good point. I'm showing you that one because this is the most expensive brush I've got. It's very, very long, and it's lovely. It's a Kolinsky Red Sable made by Rosebery & Co. I had it as a very special birthday present. Looks like a makeup brush when it's like that. Put some water in it, and it'll hold loads of water. Give it a shake, and then it comes to a needle. And I've had this for several years. All these brushes that I've shown you now are years old. They've had loads of use. But that you can cover huge areas with. You can make all sorts of different shapes with it. And yet it still comes to a point. I don't advise people just to go out and buy one of those for the sake of it, but if you've got a big birthday coming up, have a word with your friends and family and get them to club together. This is the sort of sable I usually use. In fact, this is the sable I use most of the time, almost every day. It's an SAA, again Kolinsky sable, not quite the same quality as the last one, but it's very, very, very good brush. Nowhere near as expensive, and it will last a lifetime. Again, comes to a needle point if you just give it a single shake. Lovely brushes. Last couple now, we've got some riggers. I've got 3 riggers that I use. That's my SAA imitation sable. It's a very cheap brush, and it works like a dream. If it comes to it, I could get away with just using that one rigger as a rigger, but I do use other ones as well. That's a number 4, and it comes to a very tiny point. Riggers were invented 1700s, I think, when there was a huge amount of maritime painting going on in this country, and as they're called riggers, they were made for painting the rigging on the ship. You can get very, very fine lines with them. So that's a number 4. I've also got a number 3, which is a Copman. That's synthetic, hard as nails. You can do anything with it, and again comes to a very, very, very tight point. Now that brush, 10 years old at least, and it's been hammered in its time. You'll see how you can hammer brushes. This one is a Stratford and York. Again, no idea how old it is. I bought it second hand, and that is a number 2, I think, and it's like a needle. They're the brushes that I use every day. The rest I've got a huge pile of standing over there. Some I just use, but that's my handful of brushes that I keep by my side when I'm doing watercolours. They're the ones I use every day, and I will show you when I've shut this video down, set up for another one. I'll show you on paper what each of those brushes does. Okay, thanks for watching. Right, hello. Like I said, I'm just going to do some quick demos to show people how each of these brushes that I showed you work. So we're going to start off with the hake or hake, which is made from either goat or pony hair, and it's actually a Japanese brush. It was invented in Japan. These are made by ProArt, and the person who made them popular in this country was a guy called Ron Ranson, who is absolutely amazing. Right, okay, first of all, mix up some paint, which I should have done before I started. I was too busy doing FaceTime with Verity, but never mind, there we go. Right, we've got some alizarin crimson in this brush. You see how full it gets. Now that's just a quick mix. It's not actually alizarin crimson, it's light red. There we go. I thought it looked a funny colour. Right, okay, so with the hake or the hake, give it its proper Japanese term, it's got a very, very, very sharp chisel edge to it when it wants to have. Right, so things you can do with a hake. You can do very thin lines, handy for doing trees, stuff like that. You can do large areas. You can do, just use the corner to do foliage. If you just use it lightly and gently, you can use the grain of the paper to create the things, or if you press a bit harder, you get you can fill up the paper, as well as doing the straight lines like that. If you take it across, you can make roadways and rivers very quickly by just doing that. And there you go, that's some brush strokes from a hake. Okay, oh, the one thing I haven't done is, great way of blending colours is if you do one colour like that, clean the brush, dry the brush. You've got to be very careful with hakes because they hold so much paint that you've got to make sure they're quite clean. Right, okay, with that red I've got there, I'm going to mix up some yellow. Not a great deal, but where I put that there, and you can blend the two together beautifully. That's dry. Just drag a different colour over the top. It's a very, very, very versatile brush indeed. So there you go, that is my biggest, the Hake. Then we've got my 1.5 flat brush, which is basically for doing flat washes with. Use the same colour, and that one again comes to quite a sharp edge. It's used doing large areas, or again with it having such a sharp edge you can do lines. Again with the corner you can do fiddly little, so it's one thing if you clean most of the paint out. You can do this with the Hake as well, which I should have done. That's called dry brush work, which you do with a dry brush. There we go. Right, so that's that big one. The 3/4 inch round, that's 3/4 inch flat, I mean. Again, I'm going to use the light red colour. There you go. Very geometric sort of brush. A lot smaller than the other one, but it does all the same things. Straight lines. One thing which this is very good at, I'm not, but the brush is making sort of building shapes. If you do and there you have a little house, just using this brush in different ways. You want a little tree growing next to it, just using the corner of the brush now. There you go, a little tree growing next to it. You don't need a lot of brushes. A good thing to try and do is to paint a picture using just one brush. This one, my Stratford and York, is say my favourite brush. I love this brush. Again with the light red. That is a tremendous amount of paint in there. which is one of the things you want. You don't want to keep going back into and mixing paint by using a very small brush. Right, with this I'm keeping my hand on the paper, so I'm not putting any weight on it, and then just if I put weight on the same brush, I get that, take the weight off, weight on, weight off, weight on, weight off, weight off, weight on, weight off, weight on. You can do, and that's all one brush, and it's still absolutely full. As well as that, I can do large areas. I can dry it off, waste all that paint. I can do the dry brush technique. Very good for doing overlays for dry brushing in foliage and stuff like that. I have painted quite a few pictures with just that brush. I love it. Okay, that's that one. We're on to the squirrels. That was a squirrel hair. This one is my 1/4 inch squirrel. My 1/2 inch squirrel, sorry. Again with a light red. This one isn't quite so wide as the others, but you can still get your full line. You can still do full body washes, still do even tinier little lines with this one, still do your little house. Do it the other way around now. So there you go, that's a softer flat squirrel. It spreads out a lot more gently than some of the bigger ones. I like squirrel hair, I'm just used to it. Okay, right, while we're on the squirrels, I'll go on with the mops, then I'll swap over the paper. This one, my big squirrel mop. Tremendous amount of paint in that. Now you could practically paint a door with that. There you go. I'm doing that by just lifting the paint off using the brush. A single brush stroke, and use to drag it down. Brilliant for all sorts of loose techniques, this. See how much paint it holds? You can see the paint running down that single brush mark. But if I shape it, it's still very full, but I can just go make little marks with it. There we go. I love my brush. Dry that one off. Now my smaller one, fill it up. Just giving it a couple of flicks and look at the point on that. What I do when I'm doing these very thin lines is I put my hand on the paper and then just touch it very lightly. You put more pressure, you get a thicker line. Take the pressure off, you get a thinner line. All sorts of different techniques you can do with these. Back to my landscape thing. If I want, I can do a tree. Dry out the brush a little bit. Or grass, red grass. Use the side of it. So there's all manner of ways that you can use it. Right, I'm going to get a different piece of paper because that one's nearly full. Quickly take it off the board. It's very heavy duty paper, that. I shall possibly wash it. And there, I'm going to just hold this one in place. I'm going to use the, first of all, I'm going to use the synthetic round. Lots of my paint. Round brush. You can use the tip. You can use the side, you can use the whole head of the brush. Stipple with it. You can bash it and then do foliage that way. See the mess I made of that brush? Put it in the water, give it a flick, and it's as good as new. That's, I mean, that is not an expensive brush. That is student range, Cotman, under a fiver definitely, but it'll last years and years and years. You get a cheap brush, it won't hold the paint, it'll fall apart, the glue will come unstuck, and it'll just be a waste of money. I don't say buy these really expensive Sable ones, but you can certainly get the Cotman or the Aquafine, and they are worth every penny, and they will last and last and last. Right, okay, this is my SAA Sable. Again, it's a brush I use every day, and I hammer it. The thin lines, what I like about this brush is the ability to do that if I want to. This brush is a number 8, and I could keep on doing this for hours, well, best part of an hour, before it ran out. I filled it up, and you could paint, as I say, ages. I've never timed it, but you can paint for hours, for a long time before this runs out of paint. And it's so versatile. And that's my number 8 Sable. Now we come to the big boy. Huge amount of paint in that one. This one literally will keep going for hours when it's full. Yeah, some sort of an invented bird. Again, you can use the side. You can use the whole brush, or you can just use the point. You can use it right from the end sometimes use this for doing branches on trees. That way. If you use the length, it gets to be a more organic stroke. So there we go, that's that. Wash it, dry it. So I won't expect anyone to get a brush like that. That brush was well over £100 just for the brush, the single brush. Excellent quality brush. Now Riggers. Got 3 little riggers here. Start with the number 4. Riggers originally invented to do the rigging on ships. Sails on windmills, whatever. Branches on trees, because if I like the bigger ones like this, because you can use it to do wider strokes as well. Again, hold it near the end. The other thing, you want some ivy growing on that tree. You want some rough grasses. You don't have to just use the point. You can use half the brush. You can use the whole length of it. You can do all manner of things. Now these other 2 are just smaller ones. That's a number 2. This is, say that one is the SAA Imitation Sable. That's a wonderful brush. It's about £2, I think. Here we have Stratford and York. I'm not sure, I don't know whether it's a blend or whether it's all nylon, but it's a really good brush. You can do tiny little filigrees in this, with this, if you want to, but you can also cover reasonably large areas because it's a good brush. It comes back to its point brilliantly. Again, if you use the end, flick it out. And there's that, and this one is another Cotman. That's a 2 as well, same size. This again is synthetic, and just like the other one, I find it doesn't come to quite such a point as the Stratford, but it holds a good amount of paint. And again, one of the cheapest brushes you can get. I've seen these for £1.50, £2. Again, they last for ages. They won't last as long as the big Sable or anything like that, but then again, for a couple of quid you can afford to replace it every 3 or 4 years, can't you? So there we go, that's my brushes, and I hope it made sense. I'll be doing a picture using lots of different styles as well. I'll be doing, as I illustrate pictures, I'll be showing you how brushes work again on that, but that's to give you the idea. You do not need a lot of brushes. You'll notice that one thing I never use is tiny little detail brushes. You don't need it. You can get the tiniest little detail with that. Or even where's my medium sized? Now what I've done with that one. Oh, even with I put it somewhere. Use this rigger. You can get tiny little things. The problem with using tiny little brushes is that you can only put on a tiny amount of paint. With this one, I can fill the brush with paint and I can keep doing tiny little marks ad infinitum. And what I was trying to find was my the smaller of my two squirrel hair mops, because that one comes to an even finer point than this. I'm mixing up a different colour now to both being. See how they mix together? Just tiny little dots. So there, that is brush strokes. You don't even need all those. Get yourself a decent flat, a decent round and a rigger, you're away. And that's it. If you're going to start off doing watercolour, one of them, maybe not as big as that, definitely one of them. One of them. And your rigger. That's all you need. 4 brushes, 3/4 flash, 3/4 flat. That one you don't need. That one you can get away with an inch. Doesn't have to be an inch and a half. The rigger and the number 8 round. That's all you need. Okay, right. I hope some of that made sense, and I will see you next time.